When Mark joins his wife Lucy on an exclusive corporate retreat to a luxurious private island, he expects a weekend of networking and relaxation. Instead, he uncovers a devastating betrayal, Lucy's secret affair with their wealthy host, William. As Mark digs deeper, he discovers not just infidelity but a web of lies, deception, and fraud that threatens to destroy everything he holds dear. Fueled by heartbreak and anger, Mark devises a calculated plan to expose the truth and seek revenge. But as secrets unravel and consequences escalate, Mark learns that betrayal cuts deeper than he ever imagined, and the final twist may shatter him completely. The invitation came in a sleek, embossed envelope that practically screamed exclusivity. It was a corporate retreat to a private island owned by William Fellows, one of our firm's most valuable clients. A weekend of networking and luxury, meant to foster camaraderie and, as our CEO put it, secure enduring partnerships. I'd been invited along as part of the IT team, likely to keep the tech running smoothly, but my wife, Lucy, was there as a key player. As the firm's golden child in client relations, her invitation was non-negotiable. Lucy was thrilled, chattering about the trip for days before we left. Her excitement seemed slightly off, though, a little too vibrant, too effusive. I chalked it up to her natural exuberance, the trait that made her so magnetic at work. But as we boarded the private jet alongside other executives and their partners, I couldn't shake an uneasy feeling that settled low in my stomach. The flight to the island was a heady mix of champagne and laughter. William sat in the center of it all, effortlessly charming. He was tall, silver-haired, and self-assured in a way only a man with generational wealth could be. He dominated the room without trying, his booming laugh punctuating stories that had everyone in stitches. Lucy sat near him, her eyes alight with admiration. I told myself it was just business, she was working her magic to solidify the client relationship. Still, something about her animated laughter at his every joke grated on me. The island itself was breathtaking, a crescent of white sand framed by turquoise waters. The main villa loomed like a palace against the lush greenery, its terraces spilling over with fragrant flowers. From the moment we landed, William played the perfect host, welcoming everyone with warmth and offering a personal tour of the property. Lucy was by his side the whole time, a fixture at his elbow, while I lagged behind with a few other staff members. Our accommodations were nothing short of 5-star, plush linens, ocean views, and a minibar stocked with top-shelf liquor. Lucy barely glanced around the room before announcing she was heading out to mingle. I stayed back, unpacking and trying to ignore the little flare of irritation at her eagerness to leave. The first evening set the tone for the weekend. Dinner was an extravagant affair on the veranda, with tables laden with fresh seafood and fine wine. I watched Lucy from across the room, her face lit up as she spoke to William. She was laughing again, her head tilted just so, the way she did when she wanted someone to feel like they were the center of her universe. It was her gift, that magnetic charm, but seeing it directed at him felt like a stone in my chest. When she returned to our room late that night, I was already in bed. She smelled different, a faint, spicy cologne clinging to her skin. "Just William's cologne from the hug goodbye," she said, laughing off my raised eyebrow. I let it slide, but my unease deepened. The next day unfolded like a dream, snorkeling, kayaking, lounging by the infinity pool. Lucy was radiant, her energy infectious, but I noticed the way her eyes tracked William's movements. Whenever he spoke, she leaned in just a little closer than necessary, her laughter louder and freer than usual. By evening, the knot in my stomach had tightened into something almost unbearable. After dinner that night, as everyone relaxed with drinks, I caught a moment alone with Lucy. "You seem really taken with William," I said, keeping my tone light. She laughed, a little too brightly. "Don't be ridiculous, Mark. He's just a client." But the way she avoided my eyes told a different story. I decided to watch and wait. Confronting her now, in the middle of a weekend designed to impress one of the firm's most important clients, could backfire spectacularly. Instead, I kept to the edges of the group, observing. Lucy's laughter rang out across the terrace, her hand brushing William's arm as they spoke. The small gestures piled up, each one sharpening the edge of my suspicion. And when I saw her slip away with William under the pretext of discussing business, my heart sank. I followed them at a distance, careful to stay out of sight. They disappeared into one of the villa's private lounges. The door closed behind them, and I stood there, rooted in place, torn between barging in and walking away. In the end, I did neither. Instead, I returned to the room, my mind churning with possibilities. Lucy came back hours later, her dress slightly askew and her cheeks flushed. She claimed she'd been helping William plan the next day's itinerary. I didn't press her, but the weight of her lie hung heavy in the air. The final day on the island dawned bright and clear, but I felt like a storm was brewing. As everyone gathered for brunch, I caught William shooting a smug smile in Lucy's direction. She blushed, looking down at her plate, and something inside me snapped. This wasn't just business. And it wasn't going to end well. The morning after that strained dinner, I woke to find Lucy already gone from our room. A note lay on her pillow, hastily scribbled, "Out for a walk. Be back soon. Love you." The casual affection grated against the storm raging in my chest. I stared at it for a long moment before folding it neatly and tucking it into my pocket. I stepped onto the veranda, the sun blazing over the turquoise horizon. A group of executives lounged by the pool, sipping espresso and laughing over shared memories of the previous night. Lucy wasn't among them. My unease deepened as I scanned the villa grounds, finding no trace of her. William appeared then, descending the grand staircase with the effortless grace of a man accustomed to admiration. His crisp linen shirt and tailored shorts contrasted sharply with the casual attire of the others. His gaze swept over the crowd before he caught sight of me. His lips curled into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Morning, Mark," he said, his voice smooth and practiced. "Enjoying the retreat?" "Sure," I replied, forcing a smile. "Where's Lucy?" "She mentioned going for a walk." He raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. "Did she? I haven't seen her this morning. Perhaps she's exploring the beach." The casual dismissal in his tone made my stomach churn. I nodded politely and moved away, my suspicions boiling beneath the surface. I couldn't shake the feeling that William knew more than he was letting on. As the hours passed with no sign of Lucy, I decided to search for her. The island wasn't massive, but its winding trails and secluded coves made it feel like an endless labyrinth. I asked a few of the other guests if they'd seen her, but their responses were all the same: shrugs, polite smiles, and murmurs of, "No, sorry." Finally, I found her. She was standing at the edge of the beach, barefoot, with the hem of her sundress fluttering in the breeze. Her arms were crossed, her face tilted up to the sky as if soaking in the warmth of the sun. The sight of her struck me with a mixture of relief and anger. "Lucy," I called, my voice sharper than I intended. She turned, startled, her face brightening in a way that seemed almost rehearsed. "Mark. I didn't think you'd come looking for me. What are you doing out here?" I asked, trying to keep my tone steady. "I've been looking everywhere." "I needed some time to think," she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "This place, it's so beautiful, isn't it? I just wanted to take it all in." Her answer sounded plausible enough, but there was a tightness in her smile that gave her away. I stepped closer, searching her face for the truth. "Lucy, is there something you're not telling me?" She hesitated, just long enough for my heart to sink. "Of course not," she said, her voice defensive. "Why would you ask that?" Before I could respond, William appeared on the path leading to the beach. His timing was impeccable, almost too perfect. He approached us with an easy smile, holding a tray with 2 glasses of champagne. "There you are, Lucy," he said, ignoring me entirely. I was just about to bring these down to the beach. Thought you might enjoy a morning toast. Lucy's face lit up with what looked like genuine pleasure. She took one of the glasses, her fingers brushing his briefly. Thank you, William. That's so thoughtful. I stood there, watching the exchange in silence. My jaw tightened as I noted the subtle familiarity between them, the way his eyes lingered on her, the way her body angled toward him. If there had been any lingering doubt in my mind, it evaporated in that moment. You'll excuse us, won't you, Mark? William said, finally acknowledging me. His tone was light, almost mocking. Lucy and I need to discuss some plans for the afternoon activities. No, I said, my voice steady but firm. Actually, I'd like to join you. For a moment, William's mask slipped. His smile faltered, his eyes narrowing slightly before he recovered. Of course, he said smoothly. The more, the merrier. The three of us walked back to the villa together, the tension palpable. Lucy tried to fill the silence with small talk, but her words felt hollow. My mind raced with every step, formulating a plan. Whatever was happening between them, I needed proof. That afternoon, as the others lounged by the pool, I excused myself and headed to the main villa. William's office was a spacious room overlooking the ocean, its doors usually locked. But today, by some stroke of luck, it was ajar. I slipped inside, my heart pounding. The room was meticulously organized, every detail curated to reflect William's persona of controlled sophistication. I moved quickly, scanning the desk for anything that could confirm my suspicions. I found it in the form of a leather-bound planner. Inside were pages of notes, client details, and schedules, meticulously recorded. As I flipped through, a series of entries caught my eye. They were meetings with Lucy, listed under private consultations. The dates stretched back months, coinciding with her late nights at the office and unexplained absences. A wave of betrayal crashed over me. I closed the planner and slipped it back into its place, careful to leave no trace. My hands trembled as I left the office, my mind racing with the weight of what I discovered. When I returned to the group, Lucy was sitting beside William, her laughter ringing out as she leaned in close to him. My chest tightened, the image searing itself into my mind. This wasn't just a passing infatuation. It was deliberate, calculated. And it wasn't going to end here. The weight of the discovery hung heavy in my chest as the afternoon sun dipped lower on the horizon. The easy laughter and clinking of glasses around me felt distant, like a muffled soundtrack to someone else's life. Lucy sat beside William, glowing under his attention. Each shared glance between them sharpened my resolve. Dinner that evening was a grand affair, set on the veranda overlooking the ocean. Lanterns cast a warm glow over the tables, and the scent of fresh seafood mingled with the salt air. I barely touched my plate, my focus fixed on Lucy and William. They sat at the head of the table, their proximity unmissable. "Mark, you've hardly eaten," one of the executive's wives remarked, her brow creased with concern. "The lobster is excellent." "I'm fine, thanks," I replied, forcing a smile. "Just a little tired." Inside, the storm was building. I clenched my fists under the table, willing myself to stay composed. Confronting them now would cause a scene, and I needed to play this right. I had to be sure, beyond a shadow of a doubt. After dinner, as the guests drifted toward the lounge for drinks, I slipped away. The villa's layout was fresh in my mind, and I moved with purpose, heading back to William's office. I knew I was taking a risk. If someone caught me, I'd have a hard time explaining myself, but I didn't care. The office was locked this time. I cursed under my breath, scanning the hallway for anyone who might see me. I tugged at the handle once more, frustration bubbling up, when I noticed a faint glow under the door. Someone was inside. I froze, my ears straining for any sound. A murmur of voices reached me, muffled but unmistakable. I leaned closer, my pulse racing. It was Lucy and William. Their words were indistinct, but the tone was unmistakable, low and intimate, punctuated by the occasional laugh. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but it didn't matter. The confirmation I needed was right there, behind the door. My heart pounded as I stepped back, retreating silently down the hall. The anger burned hotter now, but I forced myself to keep walking, to think. Bursting in would solve nothing. I needed a plan, something decisive and unshakable. When I returned to the lounge, Lucy was there, mingling with the guests as if nothing had happened. She spotted me and smiled, but I didn't return it. Instead, I poured myself a drink, the whiskey burning my throat as I watched her. She seemed so effortless, so at ease. The betrayal cut deeper for it. "Mark, you've been quiet tonight," Lucy said, sidling up to me. Her tone was casual, but there was an edge to it, as though she were testing the waters. "Is everything okay?" I forced a neutral expression. "Just tired. It's been a long day." Her smile faltered for a split second before she recovered. "Well, try to relax. We're here to enjoy ourselves, remember?" I nodded, but my mind was already racing ahead. I wouldn't relax, not until I had the leverage to confront her and William on my terms. The opportunity came the next morning, on the final day of the retreat. While the others were out on a planned excursion, I stayed behind, claiming a headache. Lucy looked torn, hesitating as if she wanted to stay with me, but William's light touch on her arm settled the matter. She left without protest, following him to the boat. As soon as the villa was empty, I went back to William's office. This time, I didn't need to worry about interruptions. I used a small set of tools I'd tucked into my bag and popped the lock in under a minute. My hands were steady, my mind focused. Inside, I began my search. I rifled through drawers, scanned documents, and flipped through his planner again, taking photos with my phone of anything that seemed incriminating. It wasn't long before I hit the jackpot. In the bottom drawer of his desk, tucked beneath a stack of business contracts, was a folder marked Personal. Inside were printed emails between William and Lucy, their tone unmistakably romantic. There were references to secret meetings, veiled jokes about their shared adventures, and even a few explicit exchanges that turned my stomach. But the worst was yet to come. Alongside the emails was a small photo album. I hesitated before opening it, a part of me not wanting to see what it held. But I couldn't stop myself. The first photo was of Lucy and William at a restaurant, their faces close as they smiled at the camera. The next was worse, a candid shot of them holding hands on a beach. The final image showed them in a hotel room, William's arm draped possessively around Lucy as she looked up at him, her expression soft and unguarded. I closed the album, my hands shaking. This was it. This was the proof I needed. By the time the others returned, I was composed. I spent the rest of the day biding my time, forcing smiles and polite conversation as I waited for the right moment. It came during the farewell dinner that night, a lavish feast to close out the weekend. As the meal wound down and the champagne flowed freely, I stood, raising my glass. "A toast," I said, my voice steady. "To our gracious host, William, for this unforgettable weekend." The guests applauded, lifting their glasses. William smiled, his confidence radiating from across the table. "And to partnerships," I continued, meeting Lucy's gaze. Her smile faltered, her eyes narrowing slightly as if sensing where this was headed. "Professional and otherwise." The room grew quiet, the clinking of glasses fading into silence. William's expression tightened, but he kept his composure. "I'd like to share something with the group," I said, pulling my phone from my pocket. "A little souvenir from the trip." I tapped the screen, projecting one of the photos from William's album onto the large TV at the far end of the room. It was the picture of him and Lucy on the beach, their hands intertwined. A collective gasp rippled through the guests. Lucy's face went pale, her hand flying to her mouth. William's jaw clenched, his charm finally cracking under the weight of the revelation. "What the hell is this?" one of the executives demanded, his voice sharp. "This," I said, my voice cold, "is what our gracious host has been up to with my wife. 4 months." The room erupted into chaos, gasps, whispers, accusations. Lucy tried to speak, but her voice was drowned out by the commotion. William stood abruptly, his face dark with anger. "Mark, this is hardly the time or place." "Don't," I snapped, my voice cutting through the noise. "You don't get to spin this. Not anymore." I turned to Lucy, my chest heaving with a mix of rage and heartbreak. "Was it worth it?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Everything we've built, everything we've shared, was it worth throwing away for this?" Tears streamed down her face, but she said nothing. She didn't need to. The damage was done. The rest of the night was a blur. William's reputation lay in tatters, his guests leaving in hushed disbelief. Lucy avoided my gaze as we packed our bags in silence, the weight of what had transpired hanging heavy between us. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. The flight back from the island was silent. Lucy sat beside me, her face pale and tear-streaked, but she said nothing. Every now and then, her fingers would twitch, as though she wanted to reach for me, but I kept my gaze fixed out the window. The confrontation the night before had left her stunned, and William's public humiliation had reverberated through the firm. I'd played my hand, and it had hit like a bomb. But there was one card I hadn't shown yet. Back at home, Lucy tried to talk. "Mark, please," she started, her voice hoarse. "We need to talk about this." "No," I said flatly, heading toward the office. "I need time." She stood in the hallway, her shoulders sagging as I shut the door behind me. Inside, I leaned against the desk, letting out a long, shuddering breath. The anger that had driven me all weekend was still there, simmering just beneath the surface, but now it was accompanied by something else, calculated resolve. I had spent weeks preparing for the possibility that my suspicions were true. Hiring a private investigator before the trip had been a gamble, but it paid off. The photos and emails I'd found in William's office weren't the only evidence I had. The investigator's meticulous reports were waiting for me in a folder on my desk, detailing every secret meeting, every lie, and, most damning of all, a hidden financial trail. Lucy and William had been more than lovers. They'd been partners in deceit. William had funneled funds through Lucy's personal accounts, masking them as consulting fees. The investigator uncovered enough to suggest fraud, potentially enough to sink both of them. As the clock ticked into the small hours of the morning, I finalized my plan. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about ensuring my future, my children's future, and taking back the control they had tried to steal. The next day, Lucy approached me again. Her voice wavered, her eyes red from crying. "Mark, I know I've hurt you, but please. Don't make any rash decisions. Let's go to counseling. We can fix this." I looked at her, holding her gaze. "Fix this?" I asked, my tone icy. "How do you propose we fix a marriage built on lies?" "Mark, I never meant for it to go this far. It was a mistake." "Mistake?" I said, my voice rising. "A mistake is forgetting our anniversary. Not conspiring with someone to steal from your family." Her eyes widened, her mouth opening and closing as she processed my words. "What are you talking about?" I stood, pulling the investigator's report from the desk and tossing it onto the coffee table. "Read it," I said. "You'll see exactly what I'm talking about." She hesitated, her hands trembling as she picked up the folder. Her face drained of color as she flipped through the pages, her breath coming in short gasps. "Mark, I didn't know." "Don't," I interrupted. "Don't insult me with denials. The paper trail is right there. And I've already sent a copy to the firm's legal department." Her head snapped up, panic flashing in her eyes. Mark, no. You can't. This will ruin everything. Ruin everything? I barked a humorless laugh. Lucy, you ruined everything the moment you chose him over us. She fell to her knees, clutching the report to her chest. Please, Mark. Please don't do this. I'll make it right. I'll confess. I'll leave William. Just, please don't destroy me. For a moment, I watched her, the woman I had once loved more than anything, reduced to begging. The sight stirred something in me, not pity, but a grim satisfaction. Still, I wasn't finished. I'll make you a deal, I said, my voice steady. I'll hold off on sending this to the authorities. But you're going to sign divorce papers. You'll waive any claims to the house, the savings, and custody of the kids. You'll leave with nothing but your personal belongings. That's my offer. Her mouth fell open. You can't mean that. I mean every word. Take it or leave it. Her shoulders shook as she sobbed, but she nodded. Fine, she whispered. I'll do it. The next week passed in a blur of legal proceedings. Lucy signed the papers, her face hollow and defeated. True to my word, I didn't press charges, but I made sure the firm knew everything about William's misconduct. Within days, his accounts were frozen, and an internal investigation was launched. The fallout was swift and brutal. I thought it was over. I thought I had won. Then, one evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset, my phone buzzed. It was an email from an unknown sender. The subject line read, "Before you move on." Curious, I opened it. Inside was a single line of text, "You might want to take a closer look at your kid's DNA." Attached was a file containing a paternity test report. My hands trembled as I opened the document. The results hit me like a physical blow. The children I had raised, the children I had fought to protect, weren't biologically mine. Both had been fathered by someone else. For a moment, the world seemed to tilt. The air rushed out of my lungs as the enormity of the betrayal washed over me. But as the initial shock subsided, a cold clarity set in. Lucy had taken everything from me, my trust, my family, my sense of stability. But she wouldn't take my future. With a deep breath, I stood and walked back inside. The life I thought I had was over. But the new one I was about to build would be mine alone.